What if I told you that there was a way to juice your brain to learn faster, laser your focus, and 10x your motivation to study? Well, according to Harvard Neuropsychiatrist Dr. John Ratey, that's what happens when you work out. In this episode of the Student Performance Podcast, I interview Dr. Ratey to unlock the secrets of your brain to help you retain more information in a shorter amount of time. Welcome to the Student Performance Podcast, where we dive deep into the science of concepts you never knew had such a big impact on your well-being as a student. My mission is not only to transform your life in the classroom, but help you live a more fulfilled life outside of it as well. All right, everyone. I'm so excited for today's episode because we have the godfather of exercise and the brain. Some might even call him the Babe Ruth of neuropsychiatry. His book Spark, which I have right here, has completely changed my life in the way I view exercise and how our mind works. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Dr. John Ratey. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, good to be with you, especially for the cause that you represent and what you're trying to do.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you on to hear all of your research that you've done over the years and all of your experience. So you're a pioneer, right, in exercise and the brain. You teach at Harvard, giving talks all over the world. But I like to remind all the students and pre-meds out there that this didn't happen overnight, right? You were once in college too. Can you take me back to when you first got your start? Did you always know you wanted to be a doctor? What got you interested in exercise and the brain?
No, I didn't always wanted to be a doctor. I think in college I was really torn. I didn't take any of my pre-med sciences, which attests to where my head was at. But this was in the late 60s. And it was when I got out of school, I got a job at Harvard, working as a mental health attendant. And it was during that experience that I decided, wow, this is the best thing. I was either going to get a PhD in college or something like that. But I said, I got to go back, and I did my pre-med sciences, and it was easier then than it is now. Believe me, it was tough then, but really so much different than it is right now to get into medical school and all that. So that's how I started being a doctor, and then I've always been an athlete. Played all sports, 4 sports really all the time. I realized how important it was for my mental health and for my cognitive health too, because I was always moving all the time. And when I in college and thereafter, when I couldn't be moving, when I wasn't playing basketball or on a team or something, I noticed that things were a bit less well. And so I began to really follow the literature on exercise and its effect on mental health in medical school, and took it off. It took off from there.
Amazing. And I think there's so many lessons to be learned from your story just in general. As a lot of students I work with, they feel like they need to rush to go to medical school. If they don't go straight from college, they're a failure. But even someone like you, you took time off, you found this, amazing opportunity at Harvard where you could really see, wow, this is what I want to do. And then find your passion from there with exercise and neuropsychology and mental health and all that stuff. So if Dr. Ratey, can find his passion, not right away, not from the age of 3 years old, then you can find it as well. Well, awesome. So can you talk a little bit about what happens in your brain when we exercise? Why do we feel so good? Why do we feel so focused and learn faster after we exercise?
Well, because it really affects the entire brain and all the chemistry, the electricity, the blood flow, all the stuff that the brain is dependent upon for its action. So what we know is that you increase blood flow to the brain with exercise. Why? Because when you move, you're using more brain cells than in any other human activity. So think about that. We need to get nutrients there and take away the breakdown products and all that. So we need to have blood flow. We need to get oxygen in. We need to get food in to support the cells that are working, because most of the brain evolved, or not most, but a lot of part of the brain evolved to help us be the best movers that we could be, especially into hunter-gatherer period, when we were moving all the time, and that's the period of our accelerated brain growth in evolution. So what we end up with is with a brain that is really keyed to helping direct our movements, and so that we could become the evolutionary victors. That was a big thing that drove us forward, and movement was such a key part of that. So from that, we developed this big brain, and eventually the new cells that we had to help us remember, plan, evaluate, construct, fashion our movements. We use those same cells to think with. And this is why you feel so more focused when we all do, when you exercise, when you're done. And also with that comes a feeling of, oh, it's all right. I'm all right. You're just in general, that's how you feel when you're done exercising, is like, wow, not only are you glad you're done, but you feel like you're lighter, you're more motivated, you're more positive, and you've changed your brain when you exercise, and that's the secret. Get more blood flow, get more oxygen in, change the electricity a little bit, but what you do is you change the chemistry. We know how that chemistry is changed, and that's what a major part of Spark is talking about how this happens. And chemistry sort of drives the whole process of our wonderful brains.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking about the chemistry, something I think that strikes everyone when they read your book is the miracle grow for your brain, BDNF. And I harp this into my students, when you talk about all the research about, whether it's high intensity, whether it's zone 2 cardio, you get this increase of peripheral BDNF that helps you learn faster. I remember a study, in the book in 2007 out of Germany, is students who did 7 minutes of high intensity work remembered vocabulary words 20% faster and had increases of BDNF, which is outstanding. It's miraculous, to be honest. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, the BDNF story is a huge one, and it is both peripherally, as you mentioned, but also right in the brain, right in the central part of the brain. When we exercise and move, we create more BDNF than in any other human activity, which is really significant because BDNF is our brain's fertilizer. It keeps our brain cells young and perky, and it makes them plastic. It makes them able to grow and do what they're supposed to do, which is to grow, which is the way we learn. We have to grow the learning into our brain, and BDNF facilitates that like nothing else. So that was one of the key measures that opened the Pandora's box of the brain, if you will, when we saw that exercise had such a profound effect on all of our brain chemistry, but certainly on this growth factor that we know as BDNF. And it's so important, not just in terms of helping us remember and learn and log in our information, but also it's an antidepressant, it's an anti-anxiety agent, if you will. It makes us less likely to get trapped in various cravings that are the beginning of the addiction. So as well as all of our neurotransmitters just get juiced up with movement. So movement is like taking a little bit of Prozac and a little bit of Ritalin or Adderall or whatever the people know today. It does the same thing. You increase the concentration of these key neurotransmitters that we target with our psychiatric drugs that have an effect on mood, on focus, on feeling right, on keeping us from getting too angry or too panicky.
Amazing. And when you exercise too, if you're in a bad mood or something happened and you're doing, a high intensity work, you're so focused on not stopping or just surviving while you're exercising, you can't think about all the bad things that are going on, right? It's just, I found it to be one of those few kind of periods during my day where I'm in kind of complete bliss that I can't think, right? Because I'm so focused on my exercise, on not stopping, on just surviving through whatever I'm doing, in addition to the benefits you feel afterwards. So that's so amazing. I love that. Do you have a specific protocol that you advise people to maximize BDNF or maximize exercise effects? Should you do it in the morning, at night, how long?
Well, it's a big area of interest, as people, one of the side effects of COVID, I think, coming out of it is that everybody wants to get back to exercise, which is necessary because we're all fatter. Our immune systems aren't nearly as good as they should be. And so when you exercise, you reduce the weight and all that, but also you boost our immune response, which is what we need when we're talking about fighting off infection. The protocol for boosting your BDNF or boosting your brain's functioning and making it more growth oriented is, yes, it is many different kinds of movement. Perhaps the best movement that people have come up with is something like dance, very, very vigorous dance. And if you think about it, in Spark, I talked about the early studies in Germany again, where they looked at a bunch of kids who were exercising and tested them pre and post. And after they exercised, they learned much better. But if they also had a challenge, a balance and coordination challenge added to their exercise, it skied their scores even more, which is really important, and that's why it's so beneficial to be on a team or to be playing a sport of some sort, or something like dance, where you have to pay attention while you're exercising and try to get the moves right. And then you have a person there, or a group that you're dancing with, and you have the music to go along, and all your brain is on fire. And the secret, of course, is for your brain to get very activated. And the more activated it gets, the better it gets. It's just like our muscle. I say over and over again in the book that our brain is like a muscle. The more we use it, the better it gets. It's not like you reduce it, you strain it, but you stress it, and as a benefit to that, it grows, and it grows healthier. It develops more resilience within the brain cell itself. You do this, and exercise is a big promoter of keeping our brain cells ready to deal with stresses or infection or insults of some sort. And our brain cells make more resources to do that when you exercise.
That's incredible. So activating, as many parts of the brain as possible, and that happens through, coordination. Something I've done recently is have done slow pitch softball with some of my old high school friends, and it kind of harping off that is making exercise a social event as well, as something I found to be really beneficial, because after a long day of work, maybe the worst thing you want to do, or the last thing you want to do, is go out and exercise. But if you're seeing your friends there, the people you like, you're going to have fun, you're going to be listening to music, you're going to be not feeling like you're exercising or working out, but more of the movement base of it all, I found to be to be really, really beneficial. So that's really, really interesting. So how about those people that I'm sure you get patients all the time, and I get students all the time that are like, Dr. Ratey, I'm so busy. I can't add anything more into my schedule, let alone exercise. I'm so exhausted when I get home. What would you say to that person?
Start in the morning. Get up and get out. If it means getting up earlier, it's worth it because you'll sleep better overall. You'll get plenty of sleep if you do get into the regular exercise habit, and you'll have a much better day if you start with exercise. And that's why it's so wonderful to work that into your schedule early on so you get it done. But what it does is it turns your brain on for the rest of the day. So you're feeling very positive, you're very excited, and your brain is operating at the best level it can be. So that's what I would say is, there's no excuse really for, being so crowded with this responsibility, that responsibility, but that you can't weasel exercise into a little slot somewhere. Now, what you mentioned, Julie, I want to emphasize that is the best kind of exercise is something that you like, that you'll come back to with somebody outside, fun, and that you will return to, because the biggest problem that we have with movement is staying with it. Is staying with it, even though you recognize that this is so vital. I have a bunch of people now that had exercised earlier in their life, and now they're, the world has put them in their chair. Not just with COVID, but because they're working, and so they stopped exercising, and everything went not as nearly as well as it used to go to for them. So then getting them back to exercise has been a revolution for them.
Yeah, not having to do it by yourself, like you said, having a friend to hold you accountable. Because if you don't show up to your walk or to your exercise class or to your dance class or whatever, you're not only letting yourself down, you're letting your friend down and the people who you're exercising with. So I think, like you said, when we haven't performed a habit in a long time, don't feel like you have to do it by yourself. Start small and use as many resources as possible. Invest in yourself. Set an appointment with the dance class. That's why I love doing group classes personally, is because I set an appointment. I know all the decision making is taken out of it. I just show up and I do it. And if I don't show up, I'm charged $20. And I don't want to lose $20 for not showing up, right? So it's a really good incentive, and you just have to realize you have to put yourself in the position where the only thing you have to do is to exercise. All the decision making is kind of taken out of it all. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That's a very, very common. I mean, one of the phenoms of the recent days has been CrossFit, right? And CrossFit, everybody talks about the CrossFitters and whatever. But the big draw is certainly the exercise, but it's also the social involvement. You get a CrossFit class and they are very keen on each other. They really care for each other and support one another. And it's very important for them in the relationships. They end up having dinners together. They end up helping each other in many different ways. They become a new source of friendship. So, but that's just one example. But you mentioned the biking group, the walking group, the Zumba group, which we have in Hawaii, the dog walking group, whatever, just the group aspect of it. The pushing the baby carriage group, that's another, I have that in the book, the studies showing that if a mom gets out and pushing the baby around, she's going to have much, much less problems with postpartum depression, all that kind of stuff that we know. We know this stuff. I mean, it's not just like, oh, it might be. No, it's true. It's based on science. It's based on big enough studies to give us statistical proof that the things that we say that exercise has this great power, the increase in test scores, increase in ability to learn information and remember it and use it when it's necessary.
Yeah, like you said, the literature is so robust. Like there's doesn't need to be any studies anymore, really, because we know the effect of exercise on our mood, our health, our learning. So why don't you think it's more mainstream? Why aren't people talking about this, on the news every single day? Why is this not more viral?
Well, it is in Asia. I can tell you that. That's why I've spent a lot of time in Asia pre-COVID. I was over there a lot and still very involved in Korea and was very involved in China before all this stuff happened. But in Japan, Taiwan, uh, they get it. They get the effect of exercise on the brain. So they're reincorporating exercise into the schools, but also into adults' life. To rekindle that movement passion. But over here, it's really difficult because people, first of all, people don't believe science, or I say that with a tongue in cheek, but it's and so they don't take it as holy written. In the past it's been, oh, that's just for the jocks. No, it's not just for the jocks. In fact, the jocks will get plenty of exercise. What's important is the people that aren't jocks to develop some kind of movement that they love, yoga, dance, gymnastics. You don't have to be an athlete to get the benefits. In fact, the people that aren't athletic get a tremendous much more of the benefit by doing it. And so that's been my passion. Once I realized what was happening and how we knew so much, I that's why I wrote Spark and have been such an advocate for movement in our lives.
Most definitely. And I think, speaking about your passion, if you could talk a little bit about your brain health initiative, I think a lot of people out there would be really interested to learn more about that, and also how they could get involved, how they can support, this mission that you're doing.
Well, yeah, it's with a group from South Korea here, the based part of them based here in the United States, um, with and Dominance is the group here in the U.S. And what we're doing in South Korea first is developing the model of having 20 to 30 minutes of exercise right before they go into a study hall where they're learning how to learn.
Oh, wow.
So
Learning how to
this
learn.
is,
So actually
yeah,
like teaching people how they should be studying and how
and
they
what
should be
they
absorbing information.
right. It's not just regurgitating what they had in school. This is a whole extra kind of thing where they learn how to understand what people write, what people the math, the science, all that. They really have perfected. They've been doing this for years, but now we added exercise to that front part, and we're going to see a big change. We're doing all these fancy now with our digital world, all these great tests to evaluate what changes, how it changes, not just how much smarter they get or how much more secure they are and less depressed and all that. We have plenty of data for that, but this is going to reinforce that. But also, we're getting this amazing new kind of EEG that you put a helmet on, in 4 minutes you get your EEG, and computerized EEG, and to follow that and to see how exercise influences and changes that, as well as what's called the microbiome, our gut store of bacteria and uh, other parasites we have inside, and how that an exercise changes that for the positive, and that's a very important generator of mood, of focus, of well-being. And so pushing us more and more into the wellness sphere, because the weller you are, the smarter you're going to be.
100%. That sounds incredible, and I hope it comes to the U.S. very soon. I hope it, again, spreads like wildfire, because we definitely need that in our school system. Not only the exercise, but teaching people how to learn. I feel like a lot of the education system, I didn't learn all the skills of how I should be learning, how I should be remembering and connecting information until after, I was done with college, when it should be taught right at the beginning. So I think that's an incredible program, and I encourage everyone out there listening to definitely check that out, because I really hope it becomes mainstream soon. So I told my followers on Instagram that you were coming on, and they were really excited. And one question that a lot of them have was, what's the difference between strength training and cardio training on the brain?
Well, it's a good question, and everybody wants to know. Well, it's bottom line, not that much different. In other words, you get we've studied aerobic exercise much more than strength training, because when we're working with animals, you can get them to run and measure that and see what changes in their brain, but it's hard to get them to lift weights.
Hard to make rats do curls.
Yeah. Well, they're doing pretty creative stuff to measure that. But when you look clinically, that is, at humans, without digging up their brain, and you can do scans and all that, but it's nothing like going in and measuring the brain stuff that you can do with rats and mice. Um, and so you see the changes in aerobic exercise, and now beginning to see that with some of the strength training exercises in animals too. But with our clinical side, with the human side, we do find that people who use strength training and do strength training do have similar kinds of changes that we do with the strict aerobic training. Maybe not as pronounced, but it's still there. It's still there, and it's not that much different. Um, so, and especially when we're talking about aging, or the aging person, they absolutely need the strength training, because our muscles tend to go away, and we need to keep them going as much as we can.
Awesome. So kind of like what you said earlier, like whatever exercise you like to do. I think having some sort of cardiovascular exercise is obviously good for our heart, so incorporate some sort. But like you said earlier, whatever exercise you can stick to, which is always my advice, and you can consistently go back to time and time again, is the best. So very cool. So as we wrap things up, I always like to ask the question to people who I admire. If you were to give one piece of advice to your younger self who was in college, life advice, doesn't have to be exercise advice, what would that be?
God, it's a good question. There's many personal sides to that question too, but just in terms of general life development, uh, I would tell myself that
Mm-hmm.
to stay with the sports that I love. I mean, in medical school, that sort of dropped off because of time commitment and everything. But and I picked it up again afterwards and played squash for 30 years and ruined my shoulders, but that's okay. That goes with the territory. But you know, yeah. So but I dropped off for a while, and until I came back to Boston and started running like everybody for the marathon. I wasn't as on the exercise ball as I needed to be.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson and a great cue for anyone listening out there. If you played a sport when you were younger, whether you're good or bad, as long as you enjoyed it, you can always pick it up again. I'm a huge golfer, and I golf with 90-year-old men who just started 3 years ago, right? Because it's something they love to do, and they're outside, they're exercising, they're in nature, all of that. So if you're listening to this and you used to play a sport and you don't anymore, find a way that you can pick it back up. I think that's amazing advice. Well, thank you so much. I mean, there was so much amazing advice, information, neurochemistry that you went over. I hope everyone learned something today, and I hope everyone as well takes a little time out of their day to just get moving, whether it's a 10-minute walk, walking your dog, whether it's whatever it might be. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, good. And good luck to you, and continue doing what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much.